Hi, this is a basic tutorial for setting up a feed which looks for posts which relate to a particular topic, but Bluesky Feed Creator can be used for lots of different applications. For example, collecting your own posts and even filtering for a particular area within your own posts if you want. Running a live conversation feed, for example, supporting a particular sports team, a feed for an event like a conference, a feed which pulls all or some posts from one or more lists of people, including starter packs. And I'm sure there's 100 other uses that I haven't managed to come up with right now. So first, I'm going to go to blueskyfeedcreator.com, which takes me to my dashboard. If you're not logged in, you will need to log in or register to see your dashboard. I've got this list here titled My Feeds, and you can see that I've got some feeds there already, but I'm going to click on the blue button, Add New Feed. I've already added my Bluesky account. It's this one. If you haven't done that, you will need to do that before proceeding. So when you click Add New Feed, you will instead be taken to a page where you can link your account. And what that's actually doing is linking your account to Bluesky. That is the Bluesky account that your feed will be attached to. And you can link multiple accounts. For this one, this feed is going to be attached to the Bluesky Feed Creator account. And even though I've got my own domain, I'm still using the @Bluesky Social. Okay, so we've picked out which account we're going to publish under. If a person goes to my profile for this account, they will be able to see it. So if I go and track down my account here, I can see on my profile that I've got a feeds list and the existing feeds are already in there and the new feed that I'm creating will go in there as well. Okay. Feed path. This goes into the URL or link for your feed. If we take this one, for example, we can see in the URL bar that Bluesky FC is the feed path for this one. For this one here, I'm going to call it test underscore daffodils. There need to be no spaces in the feed path, but it doesn't have to be completely unique. It only needs to be unique to you, because if we go back to this one, we can see that my profile URL is also in there. So even if someone else had a feed called Bluesky FC as the feed path, it wouldn't matter because my username is involved with how to get to it as well. Okay, the feed path, test daffodils, the maximum number of characters that you can have here is 15, but you can be as simple or as complex as you like within those 15 characters. Okay, avatar is optional. I'm not going to put one in today, but it's this guy up here, okay? It also shows up in the feed lists when someone is searching for a feed. They will see the avatar. Okay, the title and the description are pretty self-explanatory. Write a title for your feed, 24 characters or fewer. So I'm going to call this Daffodil Testing Feed, really original, and I'm going to leave the description blank. But you can put your description in here. People tend to use it for things like what terms someone would need to use for inclusion in the feed. Some feed creators include a line like contact me here, and then maybe a link to their handle, or sometimes there's an email address if you don't want to be included in the feed, and so on. Or, if someone sees something that they think shouldn't be in the feed, how do they get in touch with you to tell you about it? Up to you whether you include all of that stuff, but that's the sort of thing that people do put in their descriptions. The description is only visible on a feed when a person gets to it through your profile. So we can see the description here in my example, but for people who have their feeds pinned, like I've got the birds feed pinned here, I don't see the description when I first go into it. Instead, what I can see is a pinned post. So it's worth thinking about whether the things that you put into your description are crucial to the feed experience. And if they are, maybe consider putting them into a pinned post as well, because that will always be visible when people go to your feed. There's also the public description page. So this is a whole self-hosted page which you get with Bluesky Feed Creator and which can be linked in a pinned post or a description. And the Birds Feed hasn't done it? No. Oh, yes, they have. It's in their description. So if we click it here, we can see the fantastic and detailed Birds Feed information. This is entirely optional. You do not have to include this. You can leave this blank, or you can write into it using plain text, making all of these lists, bullet points, yada, 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 and things like this handy button, can I post in this feed? That's all done using Markdown, and there are lots of handy tutorials online about using Markdown. Here we are at capturing posts. This is the meaty part of running a feed. It can take some trial and error and it can take some testing too. We recommend that you test as you go to see whether the type of post you expect to collect is being collected by your feed. You do need to do that in real time because Bluesky Feed Creator doesn't collect posts retrospectively. Each time you save your feed once it's published, the new terms you've put into these boxes will be acting on new posts that people are posting in real time. So I'll start by dialing in some terms for my feed to search for, and it will hunt through all of the posts coming through the Bluesky Firehose to find them and put them into my feed. This is a feed about daffodils, the flowers. I'll put the terms in, so let's have daffodils, daffodil bulbs, narcissus bulbs, jonquils, jonquil bulbs. That's what I'm going for now. I am separating these terms with commas. I don't need to put speech marks around daffodil bulbs or jonquil bulbs or narcissus bulbs. The service reads each of these as a single term from one comma to the next comma. The actual word daffodil is tricky because it can be a name, including of people's pets. And so, in my real life version of this, I have found that it requires careful moderation, including blocking users who just happen to have their name or their pet's name be daffodil. That's easy to do. You can block a user per feed or for all of your own feeds, and that only blocks them inside Bluesky Feed Creator. If you come across those users out in the wild on Bluesky, you'll still be able to see their posts. However, the feed that you've blocked them from won't be able to collect those posts. The other thing that I'll do to get around this is to put the word daffodil into the require approval box. This one causes any posts with the word daffodil to come into my requires approval queue, whereas daffodils posts will go straight through because daffodils is here in the search for terms box. I'm going to do the same with Narcissus because of the Greek myth, which comes up a lot. I'll do another video later about moderation though, so keep an eye out for that. There are some things I know that I definitely want to exclude, so I'm going to do that down in the exclude terms box. I can exclude, and I can do this with all of these boxes. Hashtags as well, that's just fine. I can also work on emoji strings, so people quite often use emojis, especially if they've got a particular team that they're supporting or maybe a particular area that they're focusing their feed on where there's a community who's going to know that they're in the feed and they can use emojis to get their posts into the feed. But down here, I'm going to use the notation label colon, and I'm going to label out, or I'm going to exclude rather, posts which come with the label not safe for work, and I'll do porn, and I'll do nudity. There's a few of these that you can use. These labels are applied by Bluesky's moderation service, not by us. We don't have any kind of automatic thing that looks at the posts and determines whether they are not safe for work or involve nudity or whatever. We're doing that solely based on the Bluesky moderation service. And so I should mention that when a feed excludes by labels, our service, Bluesky Feed Creator, by default holds posts as pending for a brief time. When that happens, they'll show up down below here. I'll show you what that looks like after I click save. And they will have a grey label on them which says pending. And that just means that we're waiting for those posts to get any labels that they might get. But it's usually less than a minute that they are held in pending. We just want to make sure that we're not accidentally letting through anything that is labeled that you don't want. So once they're deemed safe by the service, then they go into the feed and they do that on their own with no input from you. If you're running a feed where you want to see the conversation happening in real time with no delay, then you might prefer to toggle pending posts behavior, which is down here, to show in real time. If you do this, you're doing it at your own risk, as it can cause labeled posts to temporarily show up in the feed despite being excluded. And so we mostly recommend that for live event feeds, such as those following sports teams. It might not be appropriate for your feed, even in those situations, if you do tend to see some spammy posts coming through. So just consider whether it's right for your own context before you hit that toggle. You can't do it accidentally because we have this dialog box that pops up and reminds you of all of the implications of switching to real time. And if you click cancel, then it's not going to do it. It's going to switch back to wait for labels. But if you click enable real-time feed, the red button, then it will. Okay, so back up here to my exclusion terms. So there are some pop culture references to daffodils which might affect my feeds. So I'm going to put those into the exclusion box too. They are to do with Final Fantasy. There's a couple of movies, things like that. Herman Hesse has got a book about something to do with Narcissus. I don't know. Okay. And then I've got some more of these, which are to do with the myth of Narcissus and all of the artwork that's been done over the years about that. So I've chosen to arrange them this way. Oh, don't forget, these boxes can be expanded, by the way. So I've chosen to arrange these this way so that it's clear to me that the top lot are to do with pop culture and the bottom lot are about the myth and the art to do with the myth. It doesn't matter that I've used a mixture of comma and new line separation. The service will read them the same way. Okay, so now I'm going to work my way down through these settings. I can decide which languages my feed will pick up. If I don't pick any, then it's going to default to all languages, okay? If I do pick some, then it's going to pop them into the box and I can have as many as I want. But if I choose none, it will default to all languages. It's worth saying here that the way that your feed displays to people on Bluesky relies on these languages matching up with people's content language settings. So if users aren't set up to view, say, Bulgarian, for instance, then Bulgarian posts might go into your feed, but they won't be visible to those users. The place where they need to check on this, we hear about this very often. If you go into your settings and you go into languages, It's this one here, content languages. Select which languages you want your subscribed feeds to include. If none are selected, all languages will be shown. So if I turn off English here, then it comes up with select languages, and then I can see posts that are in all languages. Okay. This includes your own account, so you need to make sure that this matches up with what you can view on Blue Sky, or otherwise be aware that you might see posts inside the Bluesky Feed Creator interface that don't appear to you on Bluesky itself, and that's to do with your language settings. There's also, I'm not sure if this is still happening, there was a Bluesky bug that was causing people's settings to default to whatever language that they post in. So watch out for that one as well. Okay, so now we've got this area. Lots of toggles for you to decide what you want your feed to look like. So first I need to decide, do I want to include replies? And I'm going to leave that one to include posts only. Posts with images. I'm going to set that to only get posts with images. I want this to be an aesthetically based feed. Do I want posts with GIFs? I'm going to go ahead and exclude those. I'll allow video. Actually, on second thoughts, I'm going to require approval for any posts that have video in them. I don't know if I've talked much about require approval just yet, but up here, I put some names in here as well. And so any posts which come through saying narcissus instead of narcissus bulbs, etc., that's going to come to me. I have to manually approve it. It will show up in a require approval queue, which again, I will do some work around a video on moderation. Okay, quote posts. I'll require approval of these. I'm not sure if I will require approval for quote posts forever. I can change any of this later, so I'll think about that. Order of posts in feed. So if they go by post date, they're going to be chronological regardless of when they go into your feed. If you do date added to feed, which I'm going to do, then whenever you put those posts into the feed, that's when they will show up and they will be in order of when you put them into your feed. This is really helpful, this one, if you have manually curated feeds. For example, if you have a feed with a storyline, or if you are putting your own content into it and you want it to be in a particular order, then date added to feed is really helpful. And when posts require approval, like my video posts and quote posts are going to, then it's going to come into a manual approval queue. And once I approve them, then they will show up at the top of the feed because that will be the date added. I'm going to wait for labels instead of just to make sure that I don't accidentally let through any inappropriate posts. And I want to capture posts for all users, not from specific users. Okay, for now, I'm going to click Save down the bottom. Oh, description must be filled in. I've been hoisted with my own petard. I'm just going to put some spaces in there and then I'm going to go down here and click Save. Okay, now it is saved, but it's not published yet. So if I go to my profile, it's not there yet. Okay, we don't have the test daffodils feed there. So down the bottom, I'm going to scroll all the way down and we've got this big save and publish button. And that's the important one. That will make the feed visible on your Bluesky account. Okay, first, before I click on that, I just want to talk through these buttons here. So we've got manage allowed users and lists. So I can add a list, a Bluesky list. That can be, for example, a starter pack. And that will pull posts. Instead of pulling from everyone, it will pull from just users on that list. And I can also add people one by one here. But because my feed is set up to capture posts from everyone, I'm not going to worry about mucking around under that button. I'm also not going to worry about this one. I can add an administrator. This is a premium feature. Basically, administrators can also moderate the feed and change these details, but they can't delete the feed. So finally, we've got auto moderator, and this one, if you know any YAML, this is a great tool. Even if you don't, we've got some quite thorough help documentation about auto moderator, which you can access here. And we've got sample blocks of code that can actually be copy and pasted in. So it's worth having a play around with if you're even a little bit adventurous, because auto moderator can do some really cool things. Uh, but that's all I'm going to do on this one. So now I'm going to click on Save and Publish, and that will publish the feed to my Bluesky user. You'll see that I've got this button now that says View Feed in Bluesky, and that button sits here as well. So you can always get to it through here. And this is what the feed looks like. Ta-da! And this feed is currently empty. So the feed is going to be empty to begin with because it started looking for posts which match my terms only when I hit the publish button. It can't go back in time and look for daffodil posts from before I did that, so now I'll be keeping an eye on it going forward to see if my terms and settings are producing the vibe that I was going for. This is where posts will show up when I get them. I can, if I was logged on with another user, what I would do here is write a couple of posts which I think should match my inclusion terms and not trigger my exclusion terms, and just make sure that they showed up in here once I posted them. So I've got all of the posts that my feed has captured here, visible in Bluesky. So this is without any that I have hidden or without any that have been denied. This is my manual approval queue here, and then I've got any that Auto Moderator has acted on here. If I ever wanted to pause my feed from listening for new posts, what I would do is click on this toggle here, listen for new posts, and that's going to make my feed inactive. I can toggle it back on whenever I want. So now if I go and refresh this page here, we can see that the daffodil testing feed has shown up, and that's us done. So if this was helpful to you, we'd love to hear about it. Don't mind my absent-minded scrolling up and down while I'm talking you through that. If there's anything in particular that you would be interested in a tutorial on, please let us know. What I would like to put together is one on moderation, and I think I'll also look at one doing the initial setup, i.e. how to connect your account to Bluesky Feed Creator before you create your first feed. But if you've got other ideas for videos that you would find useful, do let us know.